Have you ever wondered how a single assassination could plunge the entire world into a war? In the summer of 1914, a gunshot in Sarajevo set off a chain reaction that would shake the world to its core. Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria, heir to the Austro-Hungarian Empire, was assassinated. This event, seemingly local and limited, held the power to ignite the tinderbox of political tension and alliances that existed among the European powers at the time. Europe, at the dawn of the 20th century, was a complex web of diplomatic ties, secret pacts, and simmering resentments. The death of Franz Ferdinand was the spark that lit this volatile mix. It set off a series of events like dominoes falling, one leading to another, that eventually led to the outbreak of the First World War. A war that changed the world forever. And so, with the murder of one man, the world was set on a path to war. As the European powers declared war on each other, the conflict quickly spread across the globe. In the late summer of 1914, the first major event of the war commenced. Germany, implementing the Schlieffen Plan, invaded neutral Belgium. This audacious move was designed to swiftly knock out France before turning their attention to Russia. But it wasn't to be. The Belgian resistance, along with the British Expeditionary Force, slowed the German advance, buying precious time for the French and their allies. Meanwhile, on the Eastern Front, the mighty Russian Bear clashed with the Central Powers in a series of battles. The initial Russian advance was repelled by Germany at the Battle of Tannenberg, a crushing defeat that sent shockwaves through the Tsar's empire. Yet, the Eastern Front was a vast theater, where victories and losses ebbed and flowed for both sides. As we entered 1916, the war had reached an unprecedented scale. The Battle of the Somme, one of the largest battles in human history, epitomized the true devastation of this global conflict. For 5 grueling months, British and French forces grappled with the Germans in a bloody tug-of-war. The outcome? Over 1 million men wounded or killed, landscapes forever scarred, and yet the front lines barely moved. Meanwhile, across the Atlantic, America had been watching from the sidelines. But their neutrality was to be short-lived. Following repeated German U-boat attacks on American ships and the revelation of the Zimmermann telegram, the United States could no longer stand by. In April of 1917, the American Congress declared war on Germany. The sleeping giant had awakened, adding a fresh surge of manpower and resources to the beleaguered allies. By 1917, the war had become a global conflict, with no end in sight. The world had been plunged into a war like no other, a war that was reshaping nations, societies, and individuals. It was a war that would leave an indelible mark on the 20th century and beyond. The year 1918 marked the beginning of the end of the First World War. This was the year where the tides of war started to shift. The German Spring Offensive, a last-ditch effort to win the war, was met with fierce resistance from the Allies. Despite initial gains, the German forces struggled to sustain their momentum, and by summer, the tide had turned. The Allies launched a series of counteroffensives, pushing back the German lines and reclaiming lost territory. This tug-of-war between opposing forces, each side grappling for dominance, was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. As the year drew to a close, negotiations began. The armistice, a formal agreement to stop the fighting, was signed on November 11th, marking the end of a war that had cost millions of lives and reshaped the world's political landscape. On November 11, 1918, the guns finally fell silent, but the world would never be the same again. So, what can we learn from the First World War? Our examination of this monumental event in history has revealed a complex web of causes. Nationalism, militarism, imperialistic ambitions, and a tangle of alliances all played their part in igniting the spark that set the world ablaze. The war itself was a brutal display of humanity's capacity for destruction, marked by significant battles and events that shook the world to its core. The consequences of the war were far-reaching, empires crumbled, new nations were born, and the world was forever changed. The war also served as a harsh reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict, the echoes of which still reverberate today. We study history not merely to recount the events of the past, but to learn from them. The First World War stands as a tragic chapter in human history, a stark warning of what can transpire when diplomacy fails. The First World War was a tragic chapter in human history, a reminder of the devastating consequences of conflict. But by understanding our past, we can hope to shape a more peaceful future.